So just for introduction purposes, my name is Nonjabulo. I'm the founder of Mboma Financial Services, a financial wellness company. We also actually assist in terms of the budgeting section of the YCAP program. We've been part of YCAP for the past 2 years now. So ideally, we're having this session just to help upskill some of the learners, of course, and the educators, especially when it comes to the budgeting section. As you know, if you were part of the competition last year or the previous year, that there is a component of the competition that requires a budget, especially in terms of the planning and the financial side of how you run the project and how you spend the money for this particular project, right? And so what we wanted to just achieve is to try and actually ensure that everybody is on the same page when it comes to what we're expecting when it comes to the budget, and ideally what we're going to be looking for every time we actually assess the budgeting section, to just also ensure that we're helping the learners and the educators, especially in this part of the competition, right? So I will be switching off my camera, and then I hope you guys can still see my screen, right? Okay. Yes, you can see my screen and you can hear me, then of course I'll be starting. So ideally, firstly, of course, what is budgeting, right? And what budgeting is, it's a plan, basically. You're putting together a plan as to what you're going to be using your money for and the expenses that come with that particular plan, right? And in this instance, right, because we're looking at YCAP and the competition, you need to have some form of a plan when it comes to the utilization of the funds that you're using for the YCAP competition, right? And then, right, so the entire purpose, of course, we're planning and to help learners, plan for the spending towards YCAP project, and it just gives you a bit of a clear view in terms of what you're using the funds for, what I have versus what I need, right? And how am I planning to achieve, right, that particular project, because there's different projects people do. So there's always some component of funds that are needed for you to be able to fulfill that project and to be able to actually meet the needs that you're trying to actually achieve for this particular project. And yes, we're going to be going through at least an example to just make sure that we clarify. And then, like I said, if you have any questions, my colleague Bradley will be able to notify me with the questions, or if you want to be able to actually raise your hand and raise your question, right? Because I'm projecting my screen, so I'm not going to be able to actually pay much attention to what is happening on the board when it comes to you raising your hand, right? And then looking at how to create a budget. So basically, a standard budget, we look at income and expenses, and so that you can be able to identify whether do you have a surplus, do you have a deficit, right? And ideally, what we want to see, part of the competition is for us to be able to see with the money that you've made, okay, be it you've made the money from fundraising, you've got donations, or the school had some form of finances that you've been raising maybe over the years for YCAP, and you have that money already readily available for you to be able to utilize for the competition, right? So the budget then gives us a clear indication of where did the money go. That's all we want to be able to see, to have some form of an account of if you've received donations, if you've done fundraising, how much money did you raise from the fundraising, and what did you do with the money. That's what the budget tells us, okay? So the first thing always would be for you to indicate where did the money come from. So that will be some form of a source of your income, right? Be it if you've got the money from fundraising, you got the money from donations, right? So that will always be the first thing that you would populate on your budget, would be, of course, the income. And then you'll have to stipulate where is that income coming from? Is it any form of donations? Was it fundraising? In whichever manner you were able to actually get that money, right? Then that information would then have to be. Can you please? Sorry, guys, I'm just trying to mute. Yes. All right. Okay. Please, guys, if you're entering the session, please can you mute yourself so that you don't disturb the other participants. All right. So basically, that's the first thing we want to know. We want to know what money did you make, right? And how did you make that money, right? Fundraising or donations that you've received, right? In any form of way, if the money was coming from the school, right? Based on maybe there's some savings the school has based on maybe this is money that you've already saved for YCAP in the previous years, then you'd also stipulate that as part of your income to just give us a description, where is this money coming from, right? And then now we're looking at the expenses. So what actually comprises of all the expenses? It will always be, what's the project? Okay, so based on what the project entails, that is what is going to drive your expenses. Okay, so the example that we'll go through will just give you a bit of a clearer indication of what I'm referring to in terms of your expenses. But you look at it from your personal side also. When you have your own personal budget, there's expenses that you need to pay for. Okay, so you'd have to pay for electricity, pay for food, and so forth, right? And it's the same thing when it comes to your the YCAP project. There are expenses that you're going to be able to that you will have to actually pay for, because you're going to incur some form of costs, right, for you to be able to fulfill this particular project that you're doing with the learners. Okay, so that's what we want to be able to see. What are these expenses that you are able to actually cater for using the money? So ideally, now that we know that you've received money, be it donations or fundraising, now we need to see, where did the money go? Okay, you need to show us, this is what we've spent the money on. If we bought lollipops, if we bought paint, if we bought so many other different things based on the project that the school would be doing, this is where you'd have to actually populate the information under the expenses. So we have a clearer idea as to what did you use the money for. Okay, and then, right? So once you've got your income, you've got your expenses. Ideally, it's a plus minus, right? So your expenses less the income that you've made, it will then give us an indication as to where you over budget, under budget, right? Meaning, is there surplus? Is there deficit? Basically, the surplus just indicates that you've got more money left over, right? Meaning your expenses were less than your income, okay? Which then is a positive, because it means you were still within your budget, right? And that gives you a clear understanding, because now you're going to say, for example, you had 10,000 Rand as an income, and you had 5,000 Rand as expenses. You've got 5,000 Rand left as a surplus. So then the question would be, what are you going to be doing with that 5,000 Rand that is remaining, right? And then, of course, with a deficit, if the project requires 10,000 and you and the learners have only raised 5,000 Rand, it means that there's a shortfall or a deficit of 5,000 Rand, which then means, how are you going to raise the additional 5,000 Rand? Okay, because based on what I've seen in some of the portfolios, right, the budget kind of tells us how the project was run. For me, as a person who teaches in terms of money, it does not make sense for you to start a project and not have your budget set out as one of the first things that you do, because at the end of the day, how are you planning to be able to make the money, or save towards the money, make the money, or utilize the funds if you don't have a plan? So it's kind of a very evident for us to be able to see when people have actually done their budget as the last thing. But ideally, because you already have a project in mind, you need to be already start thinking about planning. This is the project we want to do. This is the amount of money that we think we're going to need. And now we're planning towards, how are we going to fundraise to actually make that 10,000 Rand that we need to raise for this project? Because the expenses that we have are actually 10,000 Rand, right? So the deficit then gives you that bit of an understanding, because now it allows you to be able to now work towards raising more funds, right? If you got donations and now you find that there's actually, we at a shortfall or a deficit of 5,000 Rand, we need 5,000 Rand to be able to complete the project. That's when it comes in for you to be able now put your heads together as a group and start thinking about other ways to be able to raise funds to kind of cater for the shortfall on the budget, so that you can be able to complete the project successfully, right? So like I said, I wanted us to just look at a brief example, okay? where a school is going to be doing a renovating the library, the school library, and then of course they approach a local supplier or retailer for them to be able to actually get the supplies they need. So now this is what the full budget will look like, right? And this is an example of a surplus. So ideally, like I said, the income, under the income, they would mention that they've raised money through donations and the amount that they've raised the money, right? Fundraising, they'll say, okay, we've done fundraising, we've raised 5,000 Rand, for example. And then the total income, you see it's about 6,500. Then we've got a list of the expenses. They said they're going to be renovating the school's library. Then we have to put in what are the items that they need to actually purchase for them to be able to complete this project successfully. So the paintbrushes, overalls, and now, yes, I was very conservative with this little budget, but basically just to give you an idea of what it entails. Okay, so now that we've got a list of the expenses, now we need to subtract, of course, the income from the expenses. Then it gives us the surplus, right? Because it's about 3,000 Rand that is left over. That is what a surplus is. Now it would now mean that you've got money that you can save for the next coming project, or if you think that maybe we'll use the 3,000 Rand to purchase books, right, for the library, or any other thing that we did not note or that our library doesn't have currently, then this is a great way for us to be able to see that how were the funds utilized, right? And how was it used to be able to benefit the project and the learners that were doing the project. Cool. And then an example of a deficit, here it is, right? So the school raises 1,500 on donations, right? And yet the expenses are 3,500. So it means that they have a shortfall or a deficit of 2,000 Rand. So it means they now need to go back and do additional fundraising to be able to meet the shortfall so that they can successfully complete this project. All right. So that's basically, that is just it in terms of what a budget looks like and what the expectation is when it comes to budgeting for this component of the competition. So if there's questions, I'll then pause for questions so that we can just hear if anyone has questions regarding the budgeting section and maybe some of the challenges that you might be facing when it comes to the budgeting section of the project. Any questions?
No, so far so good, ma'am.
Okay. No questions on your side, guys. All right. If that is it, then that will be then the close of our session when it comes to the budgeting part of the competition. I will share, of course, the link to the recording with Amanda, and then, of course, she'll be able to share it with the rest of the guys so that you can just have it and use it as reference. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you too, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye-bye.